Welcome to the Like a DOS podcast, where Ronnie Doss shares insights regarding life, leadership, and personal development. For more of our resources, visit ronniedoss.com. Now, let's join the podcast.
Hey there, it's Ronnie Doss. Welcome to the Like a DOS podcast. Really quickly today, I'm going to talk to you for maybe the next 10 minutes. I'm going to talk to you about a concept that I came up with. I'm calling it my Rubik's Cube principle. My Rubik's Cube principle. Now, I came up with this as I was working with one of the teams that I coach. Now, I work with lots of different teams across the country. Small businesses, startup companies, big companies. I just came from the East Coast where I did a training for a big company out there, hundreds of employees, billion-dollar company. I get to work with people, and as I've immersed myself into this leadership and personal development world, I've gotten a lot of great benefits out of it. I've got great relationships, right? My marriage is going great. My family's good. My health is good. I've applied these principles that I get and assimilated them into my life, and my life has gotten much better than where it was, say, 20 years ago. Like, I've grown as an individual. Hopefully you're growing as well. But, I think we've got to be intentional about our growth. And so when I was working with this team that I was working with a couple of weeks ago, I shared with them this Rubik's Cube principle that I came up with. And it happened because I saw a Rubik's Cube sitting out in my house. My daughter Addison had one. If you grew up in the United States, chances are you had one, you had a friend that had one. It's the top-selling game puzzle of all time. Rubik's Cube has sold more than 350 million units since it was invented, I think in 1974, by a guy. His last name was Rubik, right? He was a Hungarian sculptor, I believe. Top-selling game or puzzle of all time. But if you've ever looked at the Rubik's Cube or played with it, you know that there's 6 sides to the cube, right? Just like any other cube. And each of the sides has a color. So you got red, orange, white, and all that. You got all the colors. And the purpose of it is that you get each of the sides into order, the 9 squares that are on each side. You get it into order. And I think that this is a lot like life, in that you think you got one side in order. Maybe that's your finances, your health, your relationships. But yet you've got something that needs to be improved upon, that you've got to bring one more square into order. But to do it, you've got to be willing to mix it up and make the adjustments to what you already have. Like, wouldn't it be sad that you had like one side of the Rubik's Cube almost done, and it was like 8 of the 9 were solved, but yet you had the one that was left out? Well, it wouldn't be done. It wouldn't be correct. And it's not. There's a little more work to do. Wouldn't it be sad that somebody just took it and set it down and gave up on it just because, I don't want to make any more changes to it? That fearful approach is kind of what I want to talk a little bit about today, is that you don't be afraid of the cube called your life. Like, many people become afraid because, there's so much chaos that they say is going on. But, I've been around the world, and I've met so many people, and I've done so many trainings, both live in person in the room, but also virtually. I think 11 different countries we've done trainings for virtually. And, in doing that, I've learned that the world is chaotic, but it's also this wonderful, awesome place that provides all these opportunities for us to grow and to expand our capacity. And, I think expanding our capacity of influence and impact, really growth, is about finding order, creating order in the chaos. It's not letting the chaos freak you out so much that you just withdraw from life and you pull back and you don't play. You just stare at the Rubik's Cube of your life and you're afraid of it. You fear the cube. It's like you fear the life. You're afraid of making any adjustments. You're afraid of moving to a new city. You're afraid of getting on an airplane. You're afraid of trying a new restaurant. You're afraid of writing a book. You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid so much, and you don't even realize it. But you don't realize what you're missing out on. And you're just staring at the cube. You're afraid of it. You're judging it. You think it's judging you. And what you wind up doing is your life then becomes about looking at how everybody else is playing with their cube of life, like judging their journey. You're critiquing how they do it, whether they're doing it right, fast enough, slow enough, whatever. But you're the one. And you're looking at it, but you're not making any adjustments to your own. And so, I've realized that if the blue side is relationships, and the red side could be money, and the yellow side is health, right? White side could be spiritual walk, whatever it is, that each side represents something. that you've got to make adjustments to each side along the way, or else you just keep making the exact same turn over and over again. You're going to get the same result. And if you get the same result over and over again, you're going to get bored. And when you're bored, I think you become bitter, right? Like, because you're bored because life's not changing, and then you get frustrated and bitter and you don't do anything about it. But to change your life, you got to pick up the cube. And please hear me, this might be the best part of this podcast today that you get out of it, is you've got to be willing to mix it up a bit, right? Like, you throw it into chaos a little bit, at least enough to where you're just uncomfortable a bit, to where you can see yourself growing. I call it intentional chaos, right? Like, intentional chaos leads to growth, right? Unintentional chaos, where you just sit back and you're looking at all the chaos that's going on in the world that doesn't really have anything to do with you, and you're focused on that, that leads to panic, right? Unintentional chaos leads to panic. Intentional chaos leads to growth, because you're throwing things out a little bit. You're mixing it up. You're trying some new things, right? You're taking a little risk. That, to me, is using the Rubik's Cube to get better, to get your life into more order, bringing order to chaos. And there's lots of chaos, right? But you can't hold the cube too tightly, because there's chaos. Like, if you hold it too tightly, what happens is that you white knuckle it, right? And you cut off the circulation to the ends of your fingers, and you don't even feel what's going on anymore, right? It's just painful to you because you're squeezing it all so tightly. I think it was John Wooden that said, if everything is live and die, you die a lot. You know, and if you squeeze the cube too tightly, it's like you're just dying all the time. You're not really living. But if you looked at anybody who, they call them cuber, people that can play the Rubik's Cube and play with it well and solve it really quickly, they hold them very gently in their hands, and they're manipulating the sides, and they're making the adjustments to it. They mix it up, and then they bring it back. And with that, like, they start to solve the Rubik's Cube, and they can do it more quickly. Now, here's the good news. You do have the ability to solve your Rubik's Cube. The bad news, which is kind of the exciting news, but you don't want to get frustrated with it or don't get down, because it provides opportunities, is that the moment you solve your Rubik's Cube, the universe hands you another one, right? Like, you move through a season of your life, and one cube could represent a season of your 20s. Another cube could represent your 30s. And you're going through these different seasons. And as you solve one cube, right, like, the universe gives you another one. And in that, with the new cube, the new season, the new challenges, like, being willing to play with that some and make the adjustments, not run from it, but yet lean into it. As you learn to do that, like, you find out what you're really made of. And I just don't want to be a person that at the end of my life says I allowed fear to control me. Like, fear to determine whether or not I moved to a new city. Fear to determine whether or not I wrote a book. Fear to determine what career path I took. Fear to determine what conversations I would have or didn't have. Fear to determine, like, what I do. Like, I just don't want that to be the case. And so I'm taking action. I'm picking up my cube every day. And some days you'll pick it up and you're like, man, it looks different than it did yesterday. And that could be where a new circumstance starts to arise, or you got an email or a phone call or a challenge, something goes on, there's a health scare, you lose someone you care about, or you're laid off from a job, right? Or you just look up one day and you're like, oh my gosh, I now look in the mirror and I see a wrinkle I didn't see before in my face. Like, things are changing. And you wake up and things are different than they were the day before. But each day provides the opportunity for you to make these adjustments to the cube. And as you make the adjustments, you're enjoying the process, because that's what life is. It's bringing order to the chaos called your life. And you can't judge other people's journey, how they're solving their own problems. You can't rush through it. You can't squeeze it too tightly. You got to be willing to have some fun with it. And if you're willing to have some fun with your Rubik's Cube and not take it so seriously all the time, and be willing to mix it up a bit and do some of that intentional chaos that we were talking about, I promise you, you will see that you have talents and abilities and a capacity that's far greater than what you've known. Like, you're smarter than you thought. You have more talent. You've got more courage than you've ever known. But you must be willing to pick up the cube and do something with it, right? Don't wait. Don't just stare at it, waiting on it to solve itself. Don't wait on somebody else to come along and solve it for you, right? Get to work. Do it. Address each side. Make a list of some things that you want to change, and then some of the adjustments that you can make to that thing, right? And then get to work. Throw it into chaos a bit, mix it up, do something new, and bring some new order to it. And I think you will see that you can solve this thing, or at least get a lot better at solving it, and bring some wisdom you didn't have before to this game of life, because you deserve that. But you got to do the work, right? This is Ronnie Doss. If you enjoyed this today, please share it. Share it with people. You wouldn't believe the feedback we get of people saying, man, I love the podcast. It's helped me so much. And sometimes, like with people's life, like it's the Rubik's Cube, you don't know what they need. Sometimes maybe they just need one turn, one thing to get something into order. And a lot of times that's just a little insight, a little bit of information. And so share this, right? You never know what somebody might get out of it, how it might help them to improve their life. And if you enjoy this and you want more of our video resources, we have our Dig program, our video program on our website, ronniedoss.com. My new book, Dig, is available also on the website, ronniedoss.com. If you want some coaching, me to work with your teams, email us, info@dossteam.com. That's exciting. We love doing that. But I appreciate who you are. I appreciate the life you're living, what you're doing to make a difference. And so enjoy the process. You deserve that. I look forward to talking to you again really soon. Take care.